All right, everybody, it's the Jere Metcalf podcast where top real estate agents tell how we do it. And today we are so excited because we have Doug Leibinger with us. And Doug is #1 agent in Aspen. He's consistently top 10 in Colorado. He's in the top 150 agents in the country and sells over $100 million a year in real estate. So good to have you, Doug. Tell us, well, first of all, good to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jerry. Nice to be on.
And I'm dying to know, well, you've been in the business, for almost 20 years?
23 years.
23 years. So
Yeah.
what were you thinking, and what is it that got you into this business?
So I moved to Aspen, Colorado 27 years ago. I knew that at that time I didn't want to just be a ski instructor, although I had done that. I didn't want to wait tables, although I had done that in the past. And I knew that I wanted to get into resort development, whatever that meant. In my mind, I wanted to show up in town and make my mark in the community in that capacity. It evolved into real estate as time went on. So it took me a little while to get to the real estate side of the equation, but I knew that something about resort real estate property development was of interest years ago when I first got to town.
Interesting. So you were a ski instructor and you waited tables. And then how did you cross over that threshold of waiting tables and ski instructing? It sounds like there was a little bit of a path you went down on, or what was the first step?
Yeah, so when I had ski instructed out of college, I had been a bartender, had done different things right out of school. I didn't want to immerse myself into the real world immediately. But when I moved to Aspen, I ended up going to work for the Ritz-Carlton, and you probably know them well from your time in Atlanta. We had opened the new hotel in Aspen. It was owned by a Saudi group that was the same ownership group for DC, New York, and Houston. They ended up shutting down, and that was sort of my entry into the real estate profession when, after our hotel closed down, I had an opportunity to get into real estate.
Wow. And that was as an agent or with a development?
I actually worked for the Hyatt Corporation down in Puerto Rico, of all things, for 2 years. Uh, so really, I started the business as a timeshare salesman.
Oh, wow. So timeshare sales. And then is that how you kind of evolved into being an agent?
In Puerto Rico and sometimes in Spanish.
Oh, really? Okay. So you're bilingual.
No, I'm not.
Okay. But
Very
you
rudimentary. I figured it out. I was able
well, Isaac
to.
is.
Yeah, I was able to get by with that. But really, I think that's kind of where I cut my teeth. I mean, that experience sort of helped me evolve into what I've done with my career since.
Wow. So at what point did you make the decision that I'm going to go, and what company did you start out, well, yeah, because you started out with different companies. So when you did that, was there a job offer, or was there hey, wait a minute, why am I selling timeshares when I could be selling property and doing real estate transactions?
So I'll back up for a second. My wife was working for the Ritz-Carlton still. She actually transferred to Puerto Rico. When I rolled into town in San Juan, there was an opportunity to go to the Hyatt and work for their project. And it was a very high end, as timeshare and fractional goes, it was at Dorado Beach, beautiful resort property. And it was a great place for me to sort of cut my teeth.
Mm-hmm.
As we left Puerto Rico to move back to Aspen, I had an opportunity to go work for the Aspen Skiing Company and a development in Snowmass called the Snowmass Club for a year. It was also kind of a higher end fractional, but it was still fractional. And then I went to work for another developer. There was a development, very high end private club called the Roaring Fork Club in our valley. And I worked on that development team for 5 years. So that was kind of my history. So it evolved from very basic timeshare to more sophisticated fractionals to higher end fractionals, which moved into the whole ownership market.
Wow. And then you've been, so that 23 years ago, when did that start, when the full ownership market, or did you do the timeshares, or how does that, just to give us an idea
Now
of what you're...
that included that time with timeshares in Puerto Rico and kind of getting my entry into the market. So,
Wow, so there's a lot of people that that aren't in our business for that long, but when you are, you really know your stuff, which leads me to my next question, which is, I'd love to hear everybody's answer. So our business is clearly competitive. We have a reputation for being competitive, and especially in a place like, being in Aspen, there are a lot of people who have a real estate license. What do you think that gives you your edge, or that makes you so successful in such a competitive industry and such a competitive market?
it's funny. I actually take that back to my timeshare time in Puerto Rico, because out of the gate, I was not the high pressure sales guy. I did not have a very good closing rate for the people that walked through the door. And, the guys that were the true timeshare aces in that resort environment were the guys that could close the deal, in the half an hour or hour that they were in front of people. But I was the only person that they had ever seen that actually would follow up with people. So I got a lot of sales 6 months later, and they said in the timeshare industry that was unheard of. Like, nobody would do that. But I just was persistent and stayed in touch with people, and oftentimes had sales that were 6 months, even a year later. And I think that skill in its own right was probably the best thing that I learned for my business. It's establishing relationships, following up, staying in touch, and really not ever sort of giving up until you're definitively told no.
Exactly. So, when I hear you talk about that, I think that it's fascinating that even for me in business, and I'm like you, I like to have fun and be dynamic and different, but I never like to just close somebody. I want to let them close themselves, because I want to make sure I'm doing the only way to know what's best for them is to give them the information and let them make the decision.
Sure.
And I find that in doing business that way, it's what's over time. And when I got into this business, I was selling $100,000 property would be great. And now
Right.
now it's typically a couple of million. So because of that was it makes me like forever of our listeners to think about how you do things. But I would wonder if, you weren't the guy closing deals in 30 minutes, but you were the guy closing deals over time. There was probably an exponential effect because of that over time. Would that be true? Or what were the long-term results?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think what I learned when I got into the business, I thought I was a sales guy. That's, my mindset was that I'm in sales and that's what I do. I've realized over many years that I'm actually a marriage counselor. I'm a psychologist. I'm, a good listener.
Sometimes a dog walker.
Exactly.
Sometimes, hopefully not too often, but sometimes like at least like the bed maker or the house cleaner or the trash taker outer. But yeah.
So I don't feel like I am in sales anymore. I don't think of it in terms of numbers. I don't think of it in terms of transactions. I think of it as building relationships, and that sort of exponentially grows. So, hopefully if you take care of the people you're working for and they trust you, they'll then, hand you over to their friends, and it just kind of grows from there. So
exactly. So, and some people would call that like hunters versus farmers, or I don't know. There are different things that people say about that. But also, because you're doing over $100 million a year now. I mean, so you're in Aspen, where there are some expensive properties, but that's still a lot of business to cover. How do you find, in doing that level of business, your systems and streamlining? Does it occur naturally for you, or do you find that you really have to hone in and tell us a little bit about behind the scenes? Like, what's your team like? How many people do you have supporting you? All of that good stuff.
Sure. Yeah. I a couple years of 50 million plus basically on my own. Had no real assistance. I was doing my own bookkeeping. I was keeping an eye on all my marketing.
Bookkeeping, never. Anyway, go.
But I mean, I was doing it all. I was writing my own contracts. I was effectively a one-man show. And I got to a point at that volume where I could not sustain, I couldn't give my customers and clients the level of commitment that I wanted them to have. And so I had to bring in someone. So I brought in one assistant, had that dynamic going for a number of years, ended up bringing on a second assistant, so sort of paid for assistants. And then recently in the last couple of years, as I actually transitioned into starting the Compass office in Aspen, created a team. And so I've had up to 5 people on my team. Right now it's 4. And I think that's a good dynamic. So I've got people handling the contract side of the business. I've got someone that's handling the listing side. Got another person kind of focused on buyer leads. And then we all have, different tasks at hand, but it seems to work pretty well. And it's always evolving. So have I figured it out? No. And I don't know that I ever will.
I don't think anybody ever does.
Yeah.
I really don't.
But it's getting better.
Yeah. So, but it sounds like you've got so you basically got, I call it my closing manager, but you've got somebody handling your contracts. The listings come in, they're handling the administrative part. And then you're managing your listings. So you've got someone else helping manage the buyer leads and probably helping show properties to your existing buyers.
Yeah.
Okay. And then showing listings, do you find that you're pretty available, or do you find that you outsource that as well, or how does that work on the showing? And how many showings do you get? You're probably, in Aspen, I don't know that how busy or slow your market gets.
Sure. Yeah, there are different times we're a very seasonal market. So we have a very active and busy summer season. So we've got July and August and even into September are very, very busy for us. The same time with ski season, December through March is very busy. So during those times, I try to make my schedule as available as possible to be able to jump on the last minute showing that comes up and try to conduct those showings. If I've got clients in town that are wanting to look at property, I will take them. And then if a showing comes up, I'll hand it over to somebody on my team. So it just depends. Our spring and our fall are sort of transactional typically. A lot of people will look at property in the summer and they'll transact and sort of go through escrow in the fall. And then vice versa, they'll, wintertime they'll come and look. And then in the springtime, it seems like that's our busy transactional sort of contractual time of year.
So when you transitioned into the business, did you find a lot of people get in the business and they think, hey, my friends are going to hire me just because they're my friends, and then they find out, oh wait, not really. Did you find, because of your former experience with timeshares, that it was a smooth transition, or did you kind of start with nothing and build up, and how did you do it?
Yeah, no, I don't feel like I really started with. I did not work with kind of my typical, what you would call your sphere of influence, or your friends, or your family. I think working in a resort environment and working on a development where the Hyatt in Puerto Rico brought people to the door. So then it was a matter of just being, in front of a potential prospect.
You've got the person, just develop the relationship. They're right there in front of you. Yeah.
And then when I transitioned and went to another development, that's really where I started to establish relationships and create a base of clientele. So people were walking through the door, marketing was being done that was bringing people. And then those people, my existing clients at that development, evolved into natural clients that went to the general market outside in our area. So the Roaring Fork Club is a very unique development, beautiful sort of high-end private club with a bunch of cabins. And so I helped with the sales on that. And then a lot of those people evolved into bigger, larger properties near that development. So that was my transition.
So you kind of got to evolve and transition into it.
I did.
What did you find? And it's fun because most people hop into the business with zero experience and this idea of what it's like and have this kind of like, oh, like kind of get slapped in the face and figure it out and become successful anyway or drop out. Like,
Right.
what is it, 90% of the people that do? But I still would love to know your question in our business in general over time and your success. And you may have more than one, but what has been your biggest aha about being a traditional real estate agent? Well, I don't know if traditional is a fair word because you're not exactly traditional, but being, a broker that you are in the general market.
So I would say one aha moment was frankly related to sales and to sales volume and sort of when I was selling timeshare, it was, $10,000 weeks.
Right.
And then went into this higher end fractional and was selling an interest for $100,000. Kind of mentioned that you had a similar experience. And then all of a sudden you go from $100,000 and you tack on a zero and you sell $1 million property. And it was like, aha. So that was kind of my light bulb goes on. Like that commission check was substantially larger. And then it was a conscious effort to say, okay, if I'm going to do that, how do I focus on making sure that I'm selling, million or 5 million or 10 or $20 million properties, and what do I need to do to get there? So there was kind of an eye-opening moment where it was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, let's focus on sort of the higher end part of the market, and then consciously try to, position myself.
Yeah, it sounds like you came in just taking a job, and you were like, wait, there's opportunities in this. So you kind of adjusted circumstances to create opportunities for yourself. And what are some examples, and I think, does that pretty much cover it?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
What do you think are some examples of what you figured out and what you did to cultivate that business and those relationships when you decided, okay, wait, this is, I can come and take a job and sell, or I can go and develop and create something much bigger that's more suitable and inspiring that suits my talents and my goals. But in doing that, what was some stuff that what are some mistakes you made, and what are some things you did that were really successful and worked for you?
Sure. So I do think the customer service side of the business is paramount. I think that any new broker trying to get into the business has to think for the long term, think in terms of who is this person that I'm sitting in front of, and where will we be 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road? I think you have to look at it as building a relationship. So I think that's paramount.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a client party at my house recently, and a lot of my clients, some of them are people that I've known now for 20 plus years, and they all commented, it's so great that you've stayed in touch with us, and it sort of has grown that business over that long haul. I find there's a lot of younger brokers that get into the business and they kind of look at it as one transaction and then it's on to the next, but it's cultivating those relationships that really build success over the long haul.
So you talk about customer service a lot, which is obviously and I think it's so important because so many people get so focused on just the goal and just the deal, and the deal just happens. If you do everything right, the deal happens. It just does, and if it's not supposed to happen, it's a good thing it didn't happen, because when deals happen that aren't supposed to happen, the consequences of that in the long run can be much worse than the benefit in the short run. But back to customer service, you talk about where do you talked about your customer service experience and appreciation for that. Did that come from, my assumption is, the Ritz-Carlton, or where did you get a lot of that from?
No, I agree. I think that my 3 years of working for the Ritz-Carlton in Aspen, opening that team, and sort of their ongoing credo and mantra of ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, love that.
It was great. I mean, it was sort of taking on the idea that you own a problem and you don't point to somebody and say, oh yeah, the spa's down there on the right. You take that person to the spa and you make sure that you hand them off to somebody else. That mindset has helped me immeasurably in my real estate career because I don't let go of tackle it, hang on to it, complete the task, make sure that it's done, properly. And if I bring in somebody on my team to hand off, I know that I'm doing that with good communication and I'm trusting that it's going to get done, but there's a conscious effort there. So
I love what you just said. And Isaac, we're going to get a clip of that where when somebody asks you, where's the spa? You don't point and say around the corner. You walk them to the spa. I mean, it's
right.
like the smallest, tiniest gestures that we make can make the most profound differences. There are people that will spend thousands of dollars on things like Zillow in hopes of one good lead. Whereas if you just enjoy life and cultivate relationships and are kind to others and walk them to the spa, don't point them around the corner, the benefit, not only financially, but in your well-being and life in general, is exponential. I love the ladies and gentlemen serving, ladies and gentlemen. Jenny Pruitt in Atlanta, who a lot of people know very well, said that it reminds me, she talks about people want to be served. And it just brings that back home of remembering it's not about, people want to feel the sense that they're being served. What are some other things that you, kind of wrapping it a bow, it's ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen, and just that little effort that you can go, but give us some more examples, or maybe what was your biggest lesson that you got, or that might have wrapped it up for us at Ritz-Carlton. I just want to get as much as we can out of you while we've got you here. Because that customer service is, I'll stop. I want to say one more thing. It's so huge, and I think people miss it because they just don't think about it. Like, they don't just really focus and think about what they could be doing. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, how do I answer that question? I think I know that I learned, along with my team of fellow hotel people, that we would just take care of the customer to the nth degree. I mean, there was a period of time that I was a concierge, and we had the craziest requests of, we want to have a wedding for 30 on top of this mountain, and it's going to take 3 hours to get there by, snowcat or whatever, and we would figure out how to make it happen. So it was sort of just taking the most sort of outlandish request and following through, making it happen, and getting a lot of sort of satisfaction and joy out of seeing the people when they got back from their crazy experience and how happy they were. Yeah. I think that sort of instilled this love of wanting to help people achieve their dreams, and that seemed to just transition very nicely into real estate, because most people, a real estate purchase is oftentimes a very big goal. It's a very dreamy goal for a lot of people, and if you can help them achieve that dream, there's great satisfaction that comes out of that. So
the things that we do that they have no idea about to make it happen,
right.
as well. But I love what you said about, I think in our business sometimes spending time in the office is great because we learn from one another, but spending time in the office, we might happen to complain a little bit. And that's what we have to close off to, because it's like, yeah, but every difficult client or every crazy request is an opportunity to learn and to do something crazy and to add something to your business. If you didn't have that feedback from that client that demanded or wanted so much, you wouldn't have the opportunity to learn and explore what else you could do for all of your clients, or that awesome experience that you could provide for them again and create for more clients. I love that. That's such a great story and such a great example. What are you most proud of? I mean, you have so much to be proud of. Again, top 150 United States, top agent in Aspen, top 10 in Colorado. And Colorado is, that's such a competitive industry and such a, you've got that high-end client. I mean, it's just, you're in a whole new world. Atlanta's its own market, but Atlanta, I love you, but Colorado it's also a second home market. And a lot of these people, it's more than their second home. So I say all of that to say, in all of your amazing experience and successes, what are you most proud of?
So I think I would answer, and it falls back to that timeshare time, in Puerto Rico, where I would follow up with, a $10,000 a week buyer 6 months later, a year later, and ultimately maybe help them, achieve their dream. It's that perseverance over time. I just had a closing recently, and it was a 6-year relationship in the building. So you mentioned that Aspen is, it's a resort environment. Most of the people that I work with, this isn't a second home. This might be a third or a fourth or a fifth home. It's very discretionary, and nobody has to buy a house in Aspen, Colorado. There's no need, sort of a component there. So it's staying in touch, it's providing service, and making sure that it's not pressure at all. It's sort of just staying in touch and saying, oh, gosh, I remember Joe and Sally really liked, this particular house on the river, and making sure that you have good systems, good notes. I've got a pretty comprehensive way to make sure that when a new house on the river shows up, that I'm picking up the phone 3 years later and talking to Joe and Sally and saying, I remember you liked this, little area in town, and they appreciate that call. Whether it turns into a sale or not is yet to be determined.
Well, the engagement turns into more business, more referrals, and a further developed relationship too. What systems do you use to be able to keep such good track of that?
For a long time, it was frankly, I had a weird ability to remember somebody that wanted, I remembered their name and what they were after. You get so busy where, it starts to get a little blurry. So I just have a really good database, and I put notes, really comprehensive notes of what people are looking for. That's evolved. Now it's, basically a Google sort of database, but I have notes of river. I have notes of specific neighborhoods. I have notes of, who they worked with. So then something can jog my, as I'm driving down, I see a sign go in the ground of a new listing that I didn't know about. I can immediately call the 2 or 3 people that might be interested in that by looking through, my note system. And then I have a regular sort of CRM and database that I've evolved over time that allows me to kind of go back and track from.
I love what you just said about, this is like basic stuff, but I think that's some of my point is a lot of people in this business want to make it so complicated and like have all these weird strategies to just win deals and whatever. And it's literally like just remembering people and what they need and customer service and developing relationships and driving by a house and calling the people who would want it because you remember, or you have good systems. On your systems, CRM. So I love it because you said something about Google. A lot of agents that I interview are using Google Sheets to track everything. Do you have, of course, we know Compass is about to release a CRM, but in the meantime, do you use a spreadsheet, or do you have what CRM do you have a official CRM, like contractually that you use? Or?
So it's an Atlanta-based company. You probably know Commissions Inc.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Commissions Inc. is your CRM?
Yep.
And why? What is so great about that one that it?
I find that it's well organized, it's well implemented, and I use them for part of my business model is to have some new leads flowing in digitally. So I use the Commissions Inc. system for some of my business and farm new leads, digitally. So it's not just referral business. I'm looking for new business. And that's one platform that I found.
So we're going to tag Commissions Inc. because I don't know them, and they're in Atlanta. And why don't I know them? Just saying. Anyway, so we use contractually. I'm like, guys, like Commissions Inc. and you're in Atlanta, and like, why haven't you called me? Anyway, so you like them because they're pretty streamlined. And are they built for real estate or just built for sales in general or transactions in general?
Built for real estate.
Wow.
and I think that
I'm gonna really give them a hard time. Yeah.
they're the one company that I've found has put a lot of money into research and development, and they're trying to evolve their systems and get better all the time. So I have found them to be a very integral and important tool in my overall business.
I can't wait to find out who's running that company and why I don't know who they are. Maybe it's my bad. Maybe I do. Maybe they're going to call me and be like, Jerry, you do know me. But whatever. Anyway, so do you find that's your best? Is that your favorite tool? Or what is your, like, what is the best tool for your business? Is it that CRM, or what would you say that it is?
Well, you mentioned people that either go into the office or don't. I'd never go into my office, like, ever. So my one and only and most important tool is my cell phone. I sit in my car, I walk down the street, I do whatever. This is how I run my business.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't even really use a computer.
I love that you answered that, because usually I'll go, other than your cell phone, what is your most important tool? Because that is like, there's not a right answer, or maybe there is. Is there anything else other than the cell phone?
No.
I mean, really? You're right.
Sure,
we could even sign contracts on our cell phones now and send them out. We can even create them on our cell phones.
Yeah, no. I mean, it was funny. I was actually on vacation in Puerto Rico, conducting and getting a signature signed with a client of mine who was at the Yankees game with her dad in New York on a property in Aspen. We were both, laughing about the fact that we were both on our cell phones, just making this thing happen. And
exactly.
Technology has allowed the evolution for people to choose to live where they want to live. And that's part of a lot of my clients in Aspen are these young families that are relocating from big cities that don't want to be in sort of an urban environment any longer, and they can conduct their business internationally, but they're choosing to live here. So and it's all about technology. So, I mean, the phone is really key. There aren't a whole lot of other tools that I use that I would say you got to have.
Nothing like your cell phone. You have to have a cell phone. Exactly. I want to backtrack just a little bit, because I think about you being in an environment in doing timeshares in an environment. Usually you're kind of what you're around, and you're in this culture where the pressure is to make the sale in 30 minutes. How did you know? Most people that don't want to do that just don't do it. They're just like, this isn't for me, I'm out. How did you know there was another way? And how did you have the knowledge and confidence to do it that way? And not that you knew it was going to be successful, but kind of like what was in your world that you were, because part of my point is sometimes we need to figure out what our skills are and align to those things, and that's where success comes into play. And part of it is I just want to know, how did you know?
I really don't know that I have an inherently good answer to the fact that it just sort of evolved. I will tell you, I felt like I would have a connection with certain people in that environment, in this sort of share pressure cooker. And I knew that I just couldn't hammer them. And if I did hammer them and I put that much pressure on, they would get ticked off and they would leave. And I would probably lose the sale. But I felt a connection and a rapport with some of these prospective clients, and had no qualms to pick up the phone and call them, a day later, a week later, a month later, and say, hey, are you still interested? And then somebody said, yeah, we got home, we thought about it, and we'll send you the contract. So that instilled some confidence to say, okay, I'm going to keep doing this. I think it was probably a little bit of a luck of the draw out of the gate, where the follow-up worked, and so I just kept doing it, and that has kind of been part of my business. When I moved to the next development that I worked on, one of the guys that I worked with was truly one of the best salespeople I've ever witnessed. He's incredibly charismatic, super dynamic. When somebody's in his presence, people love this guy. But we sat next to each other, and I would watch him after he had his presentation with a prospective client, and then he'd jump on the computer and start looking at cars, or looking. I mean, just whatever it was, and there was no follow through.
He was talented, but that was it. Yeah.
He was talented, but there was no follow through, and that again, it sort of instilled this level of, I'm going to follow up with these people, and over the long haul, I couldn't maybe close people the way he could, but I closed more deals because I was continually following up with people and checking in 6 months, a year, 2 or 3 years later.
Well, and there's a saying somewhere, but persistence and tenacity go a lot further than talent. Always.
Yeah, I think it's true.
I mean, somebody that talented that just like sat around and didn't do anything with it, that's crazy. But that was even a good lesson for you. What is the one thing you wish you knew when you got into this business that you knew now? Or that you know now?
I think to be a better listener. That has evolved over time for me, that if there's one skill that I try to convey to especially young brokers that are, jumping into the business, it's listen. Because I think in our business, we're inherently wanting to show people around, to teach them what's going on, show them this, show them that, talk and talk and talk and talk, and not listen. And I find a lot of brokers are their own worst enemy because they are continually talking and they're not listening. So pause, listen, process. That has helped me a lot. And I wish I had that knowledge and that skill set earlier on in my career, because I would have.
And what do you think? Do you have any? And here it comes, Isaac. That answer makes me think. I always say this, but it's so true. Never Split the Difference. Chris Voss. Have you ever read that book?
Never Split the Difference.
Never Split the Difference. He's an FBI negotiator. He talked about negotiate. I mean, that book taught me to be a better listener. That's why I bring it up. It's about negotiating, but it's about how you ask the questions. And it teaches what it doesn't even talk about listening, but to be able to properly communicate and convey things to people, you've got to ask questions in the right way, and you've got to listen to what they're saying to understand how to move forward in the conversation, and ask them more of the right questions to help reveal the end result, which is in negotiating. He was an FBI negotiator. Isaac, make sure I send him the book, Never Split the Difference, because it's seriously, I've read it 4 times and it's on autoplay in my car, because if I ever get you're like not right, you get a little off centered, or you let things affect you emotionally in our business, which is not uncommon, and I just hit play and I listen to Chris Voss and I'm like, okay, it just grounds me and makes me a better listener. But that being, I said that to say, what is it for you that's taught me to be a better listener? For you, where did you figure out, how to be quiet and listen and process all those things you said? Is that over time, or are there some tips that you can give, or is it literally just something that's evolved?
Yeah, it's really over time. It was not something that was some epiphanal moment that, I really blew some deal because I didn't listen. I think it was observing listing brokers on a presentation where, the client might say, oh my God, I had to get out of that house because that person just kept talking and talking, and I didn't even see the house.
Exactly.
I just wanted to leave because this person was, so you witness that, you experience it, and you kind of, put it in the back of your head of, okay, I'm going to make sure I don't do that, in the future. So it sort of has evolved over time. There wasn't any one given moment. I do remember, I think it was at a sales conference, that somebody was talking about this Denver real estate guy who is a paraplegic, and he drives his clients around in his car, and he stays in his car and he gives them the lockbox or the code. They go in, they look at the house, they walk back out, they get in his car, and he says, "What'd you think?" And they say, "We like it. Okay, let's write a contract." And talk about the ultimate sort of, listener. He's not even present, and yet does incredibly great business because he allows his clients to do and see what they want to do. So I've gotten much better over time of guiding other brokers. I mean, if I take a buyer into a listing, I will literally grab the listing broker and say, why don't you and I go over in this room and let them, let the clients sort of walk around and be on their own rather than the tour guide.
Exactly. I love that.
So, that's just happened over time. And I just think it's so important to let people process the information on their own and then help answer their questions as they come up afterwards.
So you remind me of a story I have to share from our podcast. Shen Schultz. I don't know what interview number it is. So do you know Shen in Malibu? Shen Schultz?
I know the name, I don't know.
Anyway, he's fabulous. So Shen is giving a tour, and I don't remember who. It was somebody everybody would know, and it was I don't know, what is it, $30 million listing in Malibu, and Shen's walking the guy around, and so Shen used to have a carpet company, and he used to sell carpet, or no, clean carpet. It was a clean carpet cleaning company. And so he realized he's got all these connections. He gets into real estate, but he's like a hard worker. So he's like, I'd get in, I'd show properties, I'd be ready, and I'd talk, and I'd tell him about the fireplace, and I'd tell him all this stuff, and I was just working really hard. And one day I'm touring this guy, and he's a big deal with like Levi or whatever, and he goes, Shen. And I'm going to pause for a minute. Shen is one of these guys that can take it because he literally goes on 10, 20-day meditations, and he's a Zen Buddhist and whatever. But he's like, Shen. He's like, yeah. And he's like, can I give you some advice? And Shen's like, sure. And he goes, could you please not speak? He's like, I make like $1 billion a year. I don't need some realtor telling me what to do and don't like about a house. What I need you to do is be quiet. And if I have a question about the house, have the answer. And Shen's like, I was like, gotcha. He said it was life-changing. Like, that deal happened. He changed the way he did business. His business, he did so, I mean, his price point went up. Everything changed on that small piece of advice. Get out of your own way. Shut up and listen.
Right.
But you said, I think Isaac's laughing because he knows I love that story. And I don't always share it, but that I had to share it on the show again. So I've got a few more questions for you, just like, quick, like, little pointers that we like to always like close us out with. And one is your tool, which we already found out is the cell phone. And that is not what you're supposed to tell us, but I love it because you're right. It is the cell phone. The next one is, actually, I'm going to replace that one. I've still got 3 more questions. Who has made the strongest influence on your real estate career, or maybe just in life in general?
So I would tell you that the fellow who was my mentor, that was the developer on the Roaring Fork Club, a guy named Jim Light, was really my most influential person. And I don't know if you know Jim, but he and his partner, Jim Chafin, worked down in Hilton Head. I mean, they helped develop Hilton Head. They've developed other sort of boutique clubs and real estate developments. But, he was a West Virginia, like backwoods, barefoot, sort of guy who came from meager means, went on to Harvard, became a very successful guy. And he taught me a lot of just of being patient, of listening, of quiet observation, providing customer service. I mean, I was very lucky to have him as a mentor for a number of years.
Wow. So I know Jim Likey. I don't think I know him personally, but I know his name well. And I'm going to be embarrassed when I look him up and remember how. But when you said his name, I know Jim Likey. But that's awesome. And I love that you said patience, quiet observation, and customer service.
Mm-hmm.
What is a book? And if you tell me you don't read, I'll be surprised. And if you don't read, give me a speaker. Or if you prefer a speaker over a book, that's fine. But what is the book or speaker that has most influenced your career that you would most highly recommend?
It's funny. I don't do a whole lot of podcasts. I don't do a lot of the sort of speaking engagements. I have read a number of the classic sales books that the Zig Ziglars of the world that have written. I would tell you that I've read a bunch of books. There's not one that sort of stands out in my mind as the, the one go-to that I've got to recommend all the time. But what I will tell you is that I did hire a coach who gave me sort of guidance of bringing it back to basics, bringing it back to making sure that all the important things are your priority. So my family, spending time with my kids, where I got so sucked into wanting to, it was all about business all the time, losing sight of all the other things. It was a very expensive coach, but totally well worth it. And it vaulted my whole business up another notch by going back to basics. So I guess I can't answer your question of, is there one book that you should go read today recommended by me? No. But if you're going to do one thing in your business, hire a coach, and it doesn't have to be a business coach. It could be more of a sort of a life coach, but just to bring your whole world into focus, I think is a piece of.
Who was the coach that you had?
So I've had a couple different ones, but my sort of life coach that I worked with initially was a former. I don't know if you're familiar with Landmark Forum.
I am.
That business. So Jonathan Clark was going to be a Landmark Forum speaker, one of the guys that travels around the country, decided to veer off of that and go into coaching. And that was the guy that I ended up working with for a couple of years. And it was really, really helpful to me to sort of reel it all in, get sights. Wow. And then subsequently I've worked with another guy here more locally, a guy named Jeff Patterson, and he's excellent too. I don't have a coach per se right now today, but I will, find another coaching arrangement, I would say probably in this next year, and especially to focus on my team and sort of make sure that all of us on the team are functioning at our highest level of ability. So
on your answer to that question, I love what you said is bringing things back into balance, bringing your priorities, basics, spending time with your family. And there's two sides of that. I think a lot of agents do find that this career is a lot more demanding than you would ever imagine until you do it, especially when you start getting and more productive and successful and up in your price point, and there are a lot of expectations. And there are a lot of people that don't get to that level because there's certain things they're like, that I'm just not going to do that. I'm not going to make that compromise in my life just to be successful. So I say that to say, I think there's a way where people just don't do it because they don't make the sacrifice, but there's a way to do it and balance your life so that you are actually more successful as opposed to not successful by making the right choices and the right priorities. And maybe you don't have, because I'm totally throwing these out at you, but what do you think that is? Like, what is that difference between those two? How do you figure out how to say yes to the right things and actually be more successful than you are without doing that?
So, it's funny, we talked about the phone, and I've always had my phone with me, and I got to a point where, I was getting so busy that every time I had a meal, sitting down trying to have dinner with my family, the phone would ring, and I felt compelled. I thought that I had to answer the call. I had to pick up the phone and I had to go take that call, and I was like, it's really important. I've got to, this is important, family. Sorry, I have to leave you and go into the other room and take this call. And when my kids did a video of Put the Phone Down and singing a song, like, it's like my three daughters are basically leave the phone behind, Dad.
Right.
It was a good wake up call. It was like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
So I've learned that no matter how dire the circumstance is and how important the deal point seems to be, it's not that important, and it can wait. And you can pick up the phone and say, hey, can I call you in 30 minutes? And people are fine with that. They just need to sort of be told and directed to what's important to you. So I am much better about turning my phone off during certain periods of time. Answering calls. I now have an answering service that makes sure that there's a live person answering every phone call and saying that, Doug will get back to you shortly or whatever.
That's huge. And knowing that, I think knowing you have someone answering the phone for you probably gives you a sense of peace that you may not have had to not, because I think every realtor, at least every productive realtor, has that issue. I mean, we just all have it. We all have that, because what you just said, my kids listen to my podcast. They know who the agents are. They're so funny, those stories. But they're like, yeah, Mom. Yeah, and they're 7 and 8. Yeah, Mom. See, put the phone down. I mean, it's just, yeah, guys, you're right. Mom, what's more important, your phone or me? I'm like, you're so wise. Like, at least I'm teaching you something, because you're at least I'm teaching you how to teach your mom priorities and examples of what not to do. But some of that, and back to what I'm hearing is, because you've got to make priorities, but I think at some point you've got to choose your focus. When you're with your family, you're focused with your family, and you've got to have systems and processes like answering machines and good cell phones and taking notes, so that for me, it's like, I think all of us, when it calls, I want to do it now because I want to get it done. But when your family's with you, your family's with you, and in 30 minutes or an hour or tomorrow morning when you're back at work, it's going to get done. And you just being consistent and letting people know that. And I think doing things that way, would you say, is part of what helps us take us to the next level? And having that sense of centeredness in who you are and being with your family makes you a better person to do business with, which also makes your business exponentially better.
It is. I think that's accurate. I also think making sure that you start to delegate certain tasks that you don't like to do or that you're not as good at. I think, when I finally got an assistant who would handle the contracts and sort of the contractual details that I can do, and I did it for years, but I don't like doing that, and I don't like sort of the paperwork side and sort of the tedious tasks. I'd much rather have somebody else help me with that so I can focus on what I'm good at. I think making that leap of faith for a lot of brokers to say, oh my God, if I hire somebody for how many ever thousands of dollars a year, is scary for people. But that initial coaching experience helped me to end up hiring somebody that brought my business up exponentially by making the commitment. So I think that's important also.
Yeah, right people, right mindset, right focus. Because you did it on your own for a long time, over 50 million. So, and taking that leap of faith, because bringing people into your business can also bring additional strain, because people are people. So finding the people who are good at what you're not good at. What is the one thing, and this is our last question, unless I think of more, because I can do that. But what is the one thing that you would have us take? If there's any one thing you would hope that everybody listening to this interview remembers or takes from this, what would it be?
Big, heavy, loaded question. I want to come up with something really great.
Just whatever comes to mind. Like, just be nice. Even that's fine. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
This is a great one though, because it really gets it out of people.
I have to tell you, we've already touched on it. It's listen. Just listen. I can't stress that more. I mean, I think if you listen and observe, you will have a much better opportunity to have success than if you just get in your own way talking, and it's your Shen story. So
I love it. But that's probably the best advice we've ever had on the show. So I think that wraps it up. Well, thank you. Unless there's anything else you want to add, but that was awesome.
Come to Aspen.
I will, and I will let you know when I'm there.
Yeah.
Definitely. I will probably be there soon. Well, and I've got a lot of friends that go to Aspen, so I'll make sure you know when they head your way. Well, thank you for being on the show.